Hi, and welcome to Black Women Rising Podcast, the show where Black women share their stories, successes, and failures to help other Black women rise. I'm your host, Jessica. I'm so glad you decided to dedicate a few minutes of your day to listen to my podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to talk with Angela Haigler. Angela is a wife, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a business owner, a creator, and so much more. Her passion and focus is so inspiring. Allow me to introduce you to Angela. We're going to start with, where are you originally from?
Well, that is an interesting question. I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. My dad was in the army, and my mom was a civil servant type person stationed in Europe. And when they met, so I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. So I grew up in different places because we moved around a bit. But I ended up in Florence for the sixth grade, which is my mother's hometown. So from sixth grade to senior year in high school, I was in Florence, South Carolina. I also spent kindergarten, first and second, part of second in Florence as well. So and so that's sort of what where I'm from. And what that was like growing up was interesting. So it was interesting because from, my early years on and up until sixth grade, because since I did move around a bit and got to interact with kids from different cultures and backgrounds, when we moved to Florence, I thought everyone did that.
Yeah.
Like register that other people just stayed in the same place their whole life. So that was, once that kind of sunk in, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. But I ended up going back to the same elementary school that I left. And so it was almost like a homecoming. Angela's back. I was immediately given a role as a safety patrol, which I, love being able to make sure everybody left the courtyard at when the bell rang, and all of that, and so that was awesome. But and then we ended up being, after sixth grade, we ended up being bused to the predominantly white junior high school.
Oh, wow.
And so we in our community there was a junior high school called Williams and a high school called Wilson, which was the, historically Black high school, meaning the school that Black people went to, the only one they could go to, during my mother's era.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was in the neighborhood. Kids used to walk. But my mother, being the innovator, and, my parents, I should say, being the innovators and, wanting, quote, the best for their children, decided to bus us over to, the predominantly white schools. So, and then my sister went to private school because my grandmother, that is a funny story. And see, I'm going to go ahead and tell this story. So my sister had a very deep voice. She still does, but she had a very deep voice for a little girl. And she was 3 years younger than me. And so a couple of times, the teachers would say she talks too much, or, she would get reprimanded for her voice. And that was it for my grandmother. My grandmother was like, okay, she's going to St. Anthony's for 5 And so she grew up with, kids at the Catholic school. So, at least she came over to, did she go to Moore? I don't even remember whether she went to Moore or if she just went straight to West Florence. But I don't know how far St. Anthony's went. It might have. I don't know. I don't remember. So now, as an adult, looking back on that era, I see and understand things a little bit clearer than I now than I did then.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
were at the cusp of, or a little beyond the cusp of the civil rights movement. And so, whereas my mother went to Morgan State College
Mm-hmm.
and, participated, she graduated in 63. So she participated in some of those famous college, sit-ins
Oh,
and
wow.
call-ins and things like that. And so when, um, they had fought and, Brown versus Board of Education had passed. So I went to school for the first time in like oh gosh, 1971, or I believe it was, because I looked
Okay.
it up. And there was an article in the newspaper that I was in. And at the time I thought, oh, I'm going to be in the paper. But when I went back and looked at that article, it pretty much said, look, everyone, a black and a white student can be in the same class and
What?
everyone can get the job done. Because that was news. Florence, South Carolina
Right.
had just agreed to desegregate.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
there was a bunch of stuff going on that, as a first grader, I was oblivious to. I
Right.
didn't know
Right.
that was going on at the time. And so I'm working on a, a collection of essays.
Okay.
And one of the essays that I wrote was about that experience. And so I looked some things up. And what's interesting about that was at the same time that they were desegregating Timrod Elementary, which
Mm-hmm.
is my elementary school, um, there were articles saying you don't have to wait until the court decides where your child's going to go. Why don't you have them go to XYZ private school where you can decide
Oh
you know what,
man.
what's going to happen with your child's education? In essence, don't have your kids have to go to a black, schools with black kids. Let's
Right.
just send
Right.
them to a nice private school that we know they won't be able to go to.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so now and looking back on that, that might have also been partially why my grandmother decided to send my
Mm-hmm.
sister to private school, because she maybe had faith or trust that in a good Catholic quote unquote environment,
Right.
there wouldn't be as much that is I don't want to say covert or overt racism. And here's another example. Being military kids, we used to have sleepovers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when my sister was, she made friends with a bunch of her her students and white kids and such. Again, we were oblivious to at the time. And one of her friends was having a slumber party and had to come back and tell her that she couldn't go.
Oh.
She was not invited because her father wouldn't let her invite my
Wow.
sister. And so this was all, again, all new to us. Not saying that that was just, you didn't really, that my parents did not sit down with us and say, hey, you're black, these are some of the struggles we've been
Right.
through.
Okay. Okay.
We did not get that at that age.
Okay.
Later on down the line we learned certain things, but it's just at that age we weren't up on all that. So um, I think that this series of essays that I'm working on is going to shed light on that. And I know I'm going on about this, but I find it kind of
It
fascinating.
is.
Thanks. That Facebook, I have an essay about that. One of the eye-opening things for me, going to Moore Junior High School with, quote, the white kids, and then also there were black kids that all of them had gone to the same schools together, so they had that bond.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it was kind of hard for me, trying to break in and trying to fit in, or find friends and things like that. And so eventually I found some friends that
Okay.
I could kind of hang with, Teresa and Gail. I remember them because they were always me, because they were like the people I could cling to. It's like, I'm here by myself. Oh, there's
Right.
Teresa and Gail. I latch on to her, So but and then we went on to high school, and when, again, Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
when oh gosh, that's a whole long story. But when I finally joined Facebook, and started getting friend requests from my colleagues from high school. Some of them I was like, I don't know, popular cheerleader A. I don't know if I really want to friend her. I
Right.
mean, we weren't really friends, but eventually it took me a long time before I friended this person.
Hmm.
Then I finally did, and I saw all of these pictures. Here we are at, I'm making up names, at Johnny's bar mitzvah. Now we're at this group of people's house having a cookout. Now here's this. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't know about any of these parties. I was
Wow.
never invited to any of these things,
Really?
any of those things. And it just hit me, wow, this was the difference between going to, if I had gone to my predominantly, Black or,
Hmm.
neighborhood school, I'm sure my experience would have been completely different.
Right.
Not to say that, because like I put this in the essay that I wrote, I never invited any of them to any of my parties either. I mean, we didn't invite each other to our parties or gatherings. And I had a, strong church family. My mom had us enrolled in ballet, so I had friends from ballet, and
Hmm.
you had I was a 4-H'er, so I had those folks. I had my social circle, but they did not make up, kids from West Lawrence, and even, there's a big dichotomy even in socioeconomic status, even between some of the Black kids and me,
Oh,
our family,
okay.
because I think that, I don't know, it just, so it wasn't like, I think people can really grasp me and what there weren't that many of us that
Hmm.
were, in certain, certain classes, and I mean, I was almost always the only one of like maybe 3 Black people in a class, so
Right.
it was just an interesting okay,
That is. It's fascinating that it was an integrated school,
mm-hmm.
but everyone kind of still went to their separate corners.
Yep, exactly. And if you
Wow.
mix, then the Black kids would call you white,
So,
and
yeah.
the Black kids and the white kids would call you Gladys Knight. I have to have that. Sounds like a really good title for something, because to the
Right.
Black kids, I remember I had this little mushroom hairstyle. Oh,
Okay.
you look just like Gladys Knight. I'm like, no, you
Oh
don't.
my
I don't look a
goodness.
thing like Gladys Knight. But in a white kid's mind, all it takes is
Right.
a mushroom hairstyle, and you look just like this person that they have in their mind. So I
Oh,
can't wait to finish this essay.
yeah, I
And
can't wait for you to finish the essay. That is fascinating.
thank you, thank
Oh
you.
my goodness. Well, to switch gears just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
going back to your parents,
Yeah.
first off, they sounded like they were progressives.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that you're more like your mom or your dad?
Oh boy, that's a great question. Um, because my parents were divorced,
Okay.
um, I feel, just to say, I kind of see myself as a little bit of both. My
Okay.
mom was very ambitious, very, very creative, very, go-getter
Hmm.
type. And I kind of see myself in, that way. And, I see myself similar to her in that respect. My dad was more low key, more like a peacemaker, more, kind of wasn't going to really ruffle a lot of feathers, or get overtly angry. And so I think I have some of his qualities there,
Hmm.
because I don't, I feel like I'm a peacemaker. I'll ruffle feathers now, I get that from my mom if I have to. But so I think I'm sort of a mixture. If I'm probably leaning more towards my mother, and because my dad was like this big math mind. I did not get that. I did not
Okay.
grasp that from him.
Okay. Is there a characteristic in either one of your parents that you wish had just naturally come to you?
I would definitely wish that I had my dad was excellent in math. He was an excellent, he was really understood physics and um, there's another one that I can't think of. And I just didn't get any of that. I mean, I really struggled with math. I struggled with it, and thank God for calculators today.
Amen.
I don't have to worry about all of that. So that's something I wish that I had got from him. My mother is such a natural when it comes to decorating.
Okay.
And I did not get that, probably because, she did so much of it. I could just sit and watch and ooh and ah over her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to do any of that myself. So I don't have that. I didn't get that gene.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
Well, looking back over over the last, I'd say 10 years or so, what would you say to yourself if you could have a conversation with yourself of 10 years ago?
Mm. Mhm. Oh, 10 years ago. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay, let me think here. Wow. I would probably tell myself to try to save more money and
Mhm.
to actively work on my side gigs, to
Ah,
really get serious about the side gigs so that at any moment, that they could become a full-time gig or, could kind of branch out if I
mhm.
wanted to. Um,
Gotcha.
and I would probably say have more fun. I tend to be more like a serious-minded
Mhm.
person, and I think throughout my whole life, I would have tell myself to have more fun
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. And you can cut this part out if you want to, but I would say have lots of sex.
No, I think that one needs to be left in because that's very true. And to be able to say that that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We only live once, and when you're in your 40s,
Mhm.
that's prime time.
Wow,
If you're
really?
not
Okay.
married, then
Mhm.
you need to be exercising that muscle. Um, and, you know, we, and this is something that I learned later because actually our bodies change. And
Oh.
I'm not saying mine has changed,
Uh-huh.
but I'm saying I read about it, that there comes a point in time where, women's tissues change and this happens.
Mhm.
I'm like, what? They did not tell us this in high school
Right.
for a reason.
Exactly.
But keep us controlled. But yes, I would say get it in as much as possible.
I love that piece of advice, and I am going to write that one down, and that is going to be my 2019
Oh,
focus.
see?
What do you do now for a living?
Now I am an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I have my own business, and it's called One Boss Writer, Writing, Editing, Coaching, and Consulting. As I know there's a lot of ings afterwards, but those are some of the things that I do. And along with that, I am a communication strategist for a nonprofit called Community Dream Builders.
Okay.
And so I am enjoying it to the utmost. I'm able to use, so many of my talents, skills, and abilities, and they're appreciated.
Hmm.
And this whole journey has just been eye-opening, educational, and fun in its own way.
Awesome. You mentioned appreciated. How important is that to being able to be successful in your career?
Well, being appreciated in my career specifically, I I think that it's important to me. Um, because I feel like and maybe even for others, if you feel that what you're doing and your contributions are being, seen as important to your employer or to those that work with you, then it makes you want to work even harder because
Mhm.
you know that that you're kind of seeing eye to eye with the folks that you work with.
Yeah.
And you know, everybody might not need that, but I know
Mhm.
I do. So, I think it depends on the person.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Right now, as an entrepreneur, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
As an entrepreneur, the biggest challenge is making sure that you're expending the right energy to lead to financial stability. And
Okay.
that's why I say that if I had spoken to my myself in my 40s, I would have done a lot of what I'm doing now then,
Okay.
so that, that some of this would have already been done. Things
Mhm.
like, having a website or a web presence ready.
Mhm.
You know, Figuring out who my ideal client is,
Mhm.
deciding on the offers that I want to create,
Mhm.
uh, so that a lot of what I'm doing or I've had to do now, I've had to do, and those things don't necessarily net the money. And I want to say too that another thing that I would have mentioned that kind of coincides with this is getting the training, getting the
Ah.
entrepreneurial mindset training. Now,
Mhm.
I've gone to a number of free workshops about the basics, the nuts and bolts of being an entrepreneur. Whether
Mhm.
you want to be what structure do you want to be, an LLC, a sole proprietor, a S corp, all of that. But when it comes to the mindset training, I had not had that prior to. And I would recommend that people who are interested in being an entrepreneur, and while maybe if you still, you are still working a full-time job, or, and you have the funds to spend on that type of professional development, I would highly recommend it, because
Mhm.
it'll put you so far ahead so that when you are ready to branch out on your own, you can just take those next steps, or maybe you can even work simultaneously, because you would have had that mindset training. I've had some excellent workshops that have really helped and encouraged me, and so I think that's one thing.
Awesome. What made you decide entrepreneurship? Because I know that, being your own boss, that's hard. And so what made you decide that as opposed to um, being at a 9 to 5?
Interesting question. I think deep down inside, I have always wanted to work for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I had full-time jobs 10, 15, 20 years ago, I was going to those small business courses
Mm-hmm.
and, learning. And I think it might have come from, I had an uncle who ran his own, had his own liquor store. And as a little girl, he would, um, he would have my sister and I come in and count the money on Sundays. And so
Uh-huh.
I could see what that was like. This was somebody I knew who had their own business. And that part intrigued me, about being responsible for my own, um, being limitless with
Yeah.
my potential growth, or where I could go wouldn't be limited by whatever raise I was able to get from a certain job. It would just be completely on me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think I just felt like at this point in my life, I don't think I can go back to
Mm-hmm.
working for someone else, to where I come to them, well, here are my skills, and does it match up with what you need? And
Mm-hmm.
well, okay, I mean, I'm not saying that I might not ever do it, because we never know
Right.
if the right opportunity might present itself. Like, with what I'm doing now, working for Community Dream Builders is like the perfect opportunity for me. But I just feel like I want to spend some time betting on myself, because I have spent so much time, at uh, the beck and call, for lack of a better term, at others, and I'd like to be able to see what it's like when it's just on me and my
Mhm.
creativity.
Okay. Awesome. What's the best reward that you've found in working for yourself?
I think the best reward in working for myself thus far has been how much I have learned.
Okay.
Um, I can't put a finger on it. I think what happens when, when we're on some jobs, you are expected to perform certain tasks. And so
Yeah.
everything that you do is structured around those tasks. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to do everything. And so, especially when, when you're first starting out and you don't have any employees. So
Hmm.
I have learned more in these, 10 months than I have in almost 11 and a half years,
Wow.
plus at other jobs, like the ins and outs of Facebook ads
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
understanding how Instagram and Facebook work together, and learning about content that really is engaging,
Mm-hmm.
understanding more about email marketing and marketing funnels, which we never really discussed in any of my other marketing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the wave of the present. I'm not going to
Right.
say the future. It's what's happening now. And there's just so much that I've learned, and I like having that. I like learning, and I like being able to use what I've learned. It's almost like I've never had any children, but
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that it's similar in that you're tired, but you're happy.
Yeah.
You hear the stories of people who have kids and they're like, I was up till 3 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning, but they have this smile on their face. That's kind of how I feel. I was trying to figure out how to switch my website over to, from this to that, and get learn this particular functionality. And I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning, but it was awesome learning
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, it is definitely like raising something from infancy up to become this grown adult mature thing that sometimes takes on a life of its own
Mhm.
and kind of blossoms into something that you didn't know it was going to be, but it was fun
Exactly.
creating it. Yeah, yeah. So for the Black women that are listening to this, they if they have a story in their soul that they want to share with the world, what would you say is the best way for them to go about getting into that?
That is a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges for artists involves figuring out how to make a living at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to do the work to determine how that's going to happen. I know for me, I had coaching
Mm-hmm.
and coaches that, I sat down with someone and said, okay, these are all of my skills that I like and the ones that I want to use. And writing is a big part of what I want to do. And, I have all of these other things. And it really, I was like, what should I do? I have master's degree in communications. So I like to write. I've done management, I've done mid-management. I've worked with people, and so she listened very intently to me and said, you said, first and foremost, you're a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Said, so here are some things that I know of that you could do. And she mentioned writers coaching. You could definitely help business owners with their, writing needs. And it was funny because when she mentioned to me about writers coaching, I was like, what the heck is that? I was like, I don't know what that. But as I've gone into it and learned a little bit more, I see that people do need help.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the process of determining without, within without a shadow of a doubt who my ideal audience is. And that's probably the most important thing that everyone should determine.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your ideal client? And I think I'm leaning towards people who do need help shepherding their story. And I can help with that because I've received training in that. I do writing and I can help with that. Along the way, I'm learning that people need help, business owners need help with, because they're so busy. And if they're somewhat successful, they might need help doing what in their mind is mundane tasks, such as putting a website together, figuring out how to, figuring out what their brochure copy should be, or help with the workbooks,
Yes.
things that I didn't, realize on a large scale people needed help with. I really am a big proponent of coaching
Mm-hmm.
and getting the training to have people help you. That I have not been able to do this at all without having a support network
Mm.
and being around like-minded people. I mean, I'm going to put a plug in. I don't know if for a
Oh yeah.
couple of people that I really, really think are great at this. And that one of them is Rosetta Thurman of Happy Black Women. She started my journey, helped start my journey, because I went to Manifest Your Vision, which is a big conference that she holds usually in Fort Lauderdale in January. And so that sort of helped strike a match, because I was around all these other women, and some of them knew exactly what they wanted to do, some of them didn't. And throughout the exercises that we experienced that week, I was able to again get clearer on that. Then when I came back, this is just how I'm a big believer, how God works.
Mm-hmm.
I had already been talking to a friend of mine about how I really am ready. I'm ready to branch out on my own. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to remain in my current environment. So when I was no longer, and before I was no longer in that environment, she said, well, you might want to participate in this mastermind group that is getting ready to be formed. I'm like, sign me up, I'm in. So as soon as I got back from Manifest Your Vision, immediately I went into this mastermind group. And again, that's where I got the coaching. I was encouraged, to create a product. So it was almost like having a business degree, having some of the things I would suspect are involved in getting a business degree, but you're getting them from like-minded individuals. And
Right.
so that I think is key to get a mastermind, get involved in a mastermind, do some sort of big training with people that have a similar mindset that you do, so you can try to figure out what it is that you want to do and get some tips and pointers on how to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Awesome. So just to, again, we're going to shift gears just a tiny bit.
Sure.
So it's 2018, and we've had a rough 2 years here in America, to say the least. What would you say, or what do you think is the biggest obstacle right now for Black women of any age to overcome being Black female in America?
That is an excellent question. There are so many obstacles. So many obstacles. I think I can break it down into a couple. One, and this is more of a solution, but it sort of points to the obstacle. I think one of the biggest obstacles that Black women face is feeling as if they can protect their health, and that they can put their health first. We have to do it. This could be another book or topic. I ain't your big mama. Because we get into the big mama syndrome. We have to cook these fantastic, fabulous meals for everyone that are most of the time fat, have a bunch of fat and no vegetables. And, we're not exercising because we're so busy worrying about babying them. But when we're not taking care of ourselves,
Yes.
and we have got to put ourselves first. And that's not what we've been taught. As women, we are taught to put everyone else. And as Black women, we are certainly not supposed to put ourselves first.
Right.
But we've got to do it. And I think that if we can, just like in that airplane, we've got to, when you're in the airplane and they read you the safety tips, we've got to put that oxygen mask on ourselves first.
Oh, yes.
And get our health in order.
Yeah,
and then we'll be able to do some of these other things that we can exert our Black girl magic, as everybody likes to say.
Exactly. So along those lines, what scares you the most about the future of the world with respect to Black women?
What scares me the most about this country and the future of Black women is that it feels that we are going to be expected and needed to right this ship, and it just feels like a burden. It just feels like such a burden. But if we don't take it on, I don't know what's going to happen. If I look around at some of the women leaders that are out here speaking and no one's hearing them, and from a political perspective, it's overwhelming. I think that's why I go back to the health thing, because it can drive you crazy
Yeah.
thinking about all of this and wondering what's going to happen to our children, to us, to this country. And I don't know, the big, it just, I try not to think about it so much
Right.
because there's so much that could scare us if we
Yeah.
thought about it. I mean, there's the environment,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's, we have a bunch of wealthy people that don't seem to care about the poor,
Mm-hmm.
and those that less advantaged than them. And I just don't know. I don't know where to start really with the things that scare me. There's
Yeah.
just so much that is out there. And and it's not just about one particular party. It just feels as if the country is experiencing a shift. There was so much I am a political junkie. I like to read politics, keep up with everything.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like there was too much of a shift for certain populations, and they got scared and wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be any more change.
Yeah.
At least not the way that it was happening in this country. And a lot of folks have got kind of complacent and thought, well, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, we've changed and everything's going to be fine. And it's not the case. It's like there's been a population of folks just waiting in the wings
Yeah.
to come into power and change everything that had all the positive, as some say, progressive change that had taken place.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. As a rising Black woman, what what would you say is your personal mission?
My personal mission, and this is something that I have come to realize about myself, is in and around the idea of choosing and searching and wanting to operate from my most authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this need to help others, and that has got to always be a part of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, my personal mission is to explore and operate in my authentic self
Mm-hmm.
and help others.
Yeah. I like that. That authenticity piece is, it just seems like it's really missing today among so many people. And I really like that authenticity piece.
Thank you.
So, final question.
Hmm.
What is next for Angela?
Wow. What's next for Angela? Um, I am working on this essay collection that I was telling you about. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of in the background because my focus is on being able to make a contribution through my entrepreneurial efforts that also enables me to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And every day I discover, I feel like I'm 1, 2, 3, and 4 steps closer to realizing that. And so, but it does take time. So that is, and I guess I could say what's next is working on my own writing,
Mm-hmm.
helping other people with their writing, and also being able to make a contribution to the community through what I'm doing at Community Dream Builders. And it's almost as if every opportunity that I had hoped to realize from working there is
Mm-hmm.
coming into play with this organization, and this sort of spearheading some wealth building in the Black community efforts. Also working to bring awareness of, gentrification in the community. And, that really makes me feel good knowing that I'm making a difference through that organization, that particular nonprofit. Um, so that kind of it. Oh, and I do want to say this. There was an recent article that was written that said that in 2023, I believe, no, 2053, the median wealth or median income for Black people. Okay, you're not going to be able to quote me on this one. I'm just going to tell you this because I can't remember the exact thing, but it's 2053. The median net worth or something for Black people is going to be like 0.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
and for Black women without a degree, it's 0. For Black women with a degree, it's a negative 11,000. So we got to work on building, on our wealth and getting ourselves together from a financial perspective. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to contribute to that by my own net worth. I'm not working on.
Exactly.
So I can be one of the ones that's not 0.
Absolutely. So
yeah.
where can people learn more about you?
Oh, that's a great question. They can learn. I am on Instagram as One Boss Writer. Also, I have a website that is in progress that is also called onebosswriter.com. I have a blog called angelicmusings.wordpress.com. And I am also on Facebook, Angela M. Haigler. So those are, and also I've got my personal Facebook as well, Angela Haigler G. So those are some of the places that people can find out more about me.
Perfect. And I'm going to put all of that information in the show notes so that people can make sure that they go and visit you, and we're waiting for those essays to come out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Yes, this has been fun. Glad to help.